To no one's surprise, Silver is the next hero added to Deadlock, and she is the first stance-switching hero that we've had in this game. She's a werewolf bounty hunter, and she has more abilities than any other character in Deadlock. And so, in this video, I want to explain exactly how she works in detail, because yeah, there is a lot to talk about with this hero. So, let's just jump straight in. So first up, let's just take a look at her base stats real quick. She doesn't have anything unique going on here whatsoever with her stats. No weird spirit scaling on anything, no innate lifesteal like I actually almost missed on Graves. So yeah, just pretty plain and vanilla here. She does have 2 stamina, but she also is reasonably tanky. She has 725 max health and 2 health regen, and at max level she scales up to 1740 health, and her weapon DPS is also once again on the lower side. She actually has quite an interesting weapon to behold, because this weapon has the absolute slowest fire rate in the entire game. I'm going to hold down left mouse button to demonstrate. Whew. Yeah, that's really slow, and this is a shotgun, by the way. Nice little shotgun spread there, and it reloads bullet by bullet, just like Abrams. But yeah, this is a very slow firing gun, and the shots do indeed hit hard, but that fire rate really hampers this gun's overall damage per second. And if you have an extraordinarily keen eye, then you might notice something about this character with her animations, especially once we start to look at her melee and her parry. She's kind of unfinished at the moment, and that's why, if you think her animations look stiff, they are. They stole many of Seven's animations and slapped them onto this character, and they don't work as well. So yeah, she has Seven's butt parry, she has Seven's kick, she holds her gun like Seven, and that's why it all just seems a little strange. I thought this character was off when I first saw her. Couldn't exactly explain why until I realized, oh, yeah, she's got some temporary animations. But anyways, let's talk more about this character's abilities, and I'm going to go kind of in reverse order here. Normally I start with her first ability, but instead, we're going to jump straight into her ultimate, because this is an integral part of her character design, and you're going to be using this ultimate very frequently throughout the match. So this is the Lykan Curse. It has a 22-second cooldown and a 15-second duration. Those numbers are interesting. What could that possibly mean? Well, Lykan Curse is how she transforms into a werewolf, and so it comes with a passive. Dealing damage generates bloodlust, increased at low health. At max bloodlust, you will automatically cast Lykan Curse. And when you are in the Lykan Curse, you transform into a werewolf, where you have increased max health, move speed, and stacking fire rate on enemy heroes. And it'll also replace all of your abilities and your weapon with their ferocious werewolf versions. And so you get a bunch of bonus health that scales with boons, you get 3 meters per second of move speed, and as you attack enemies, you will gain stacking fire rate up to 80%, and this also scales with spirit power. Furthermore, you heal 30% of your missing health, and you get 20% bullet and spirit resist. So if I go ahead and just do some damage here, you can see that we will automatically transform into a werewolf. Whoa! And this has a very short-ranged attack. It's basically pseudo-melee, but it is not actually melee. You don't have to worry about getting parried with this thing, and you also have regular melee attacks too. And it will also not work with any melee items, so it's just the new shortest range weapon in the game. Sorry, Graves, you've already been surpassed. But yeah, then after that, we transform back into Silver, and the ultimate goes on cooldown for, well, another 22 seconds. And once this is back off cooldown, I have to build up the Bloodlust again in order to cast the ultimate. So I can't just cast the ultimate whenever I want. I have to do damage with my abilities and my weapons before being able to activate the curse. And you can also press the ultimate button to activate it a little bit sooner. Once you see that text pop up on your screen saying that you're about to transform, anytime during that window, you can actually press your ultimate button and automatically transform. So let's take a look at the upgrades here. The Tier 1 upgrade gives you 15% more bullet and spirit resist, bringing your total up to 35% of both resistances for the entire time that you are a werewolf, which is very powerful indeed, but considering that you have one of the biggest hitboxes in the game, this is honestly a necessary feature in order to not instantly die. The Tier 2 upgrade gives her plus 3 additional meters of move speed, bringing the total up to 6 meters per second of move speed and 125 bonus health. Very powerful, but again, considering that you are a pseudo melee character, and you also are very big, this is again almost pretty much just necessary, so even though the numbers seem incredibly strong, it actually ends up being pretty balanced in the end. Finally, the Tier 3 makes it so that on hero kill, you will refresh all of your ability cooldowns, the duration of the curse, and you will also get that transformation heal again, allowing you to keep the cycle going and chain werewolf kills, which is very, very fun. Now, before we move on to our abilities, I do want to discuss a few very weird quirks about the Lykan curse. So dealing damage to enemy heroes is how you generate the most bloodlust. And you'll also notice that even after I stop shooting, there is actually a little window where it will kind of creep up, but eventually it'll start winding down again. And so you can lose bloodlust if you're not actively hitting enemy heroes enough. And you can also build bloodlust by taking damage, although not nearly as much bloodlust as from actually dealing the damage yourself. So as you can see, as Infernus shoots me here, I do build up some of my Lykan curse. And then I can also build up some, a tiny bit of bloodlust from shooting these camps, although I've noticed that you can't really get too much from this. I don't think you can accidentally transform into a werewolf just while hitting jungles, although to be honest, you won't want to hit jungles that frequently anyways. And furthermore, you can also build some bloodlust from these minions on the lane, although again, very, very little. You can see the bars barely going up. It seems like, as well, for some reason, you don't generate a lot of bloodlust from hitting objectives. I'm doing a lot of damage to this objective right now, but I am, like, not really building bloodlust. I'm actually building more bloodlust just from the damage that the Guardian is dealing to me. And the same is true for the Walker. If I come over here, I actually pretty much don't build any bloodlust at all from shooting it, but I do build bloodlust from getting shot by it, but still not that much. It honestly is really strange how this mechanic works. It's not that you can't build bloodlust from anything other than heroes, but building bloodlust from anything other than heroes is pretty much just inviable, and so it might as well not even really be a feature. And from my testing in actual matches, it honestly also does seem a little bit limiting that you can't at least build a little bit more bloodlust, especially from hitting objectives. From camps and minions, sure, we don't have to build bloodlust from that. But I do think already, just based on my limited testing, you should be able to build a little bit more bloodlust from hitting objectives, because that's still a very important thing that you want to be able to build some bloodlust off of. One more thing to note about the Lykan curse is that it also scales how much damage you need to activate it based on your boons. So it actually is harder to activate later in the game if your damage scaling isn't keeping up. So let me show you what I mean. Against this test dummy here, if I only do body shots, then it requires 10 shots to build it up. So yeah, let me just demonstrate that for you. It takes a sec because she fires so slowly. Wabam, wabam, and boom. I have entered the Lykan curse. But now if I go ahead and max level and also turn on no reload, look at how many shots it takes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we're only halfway there. And it's gonna take us even longer to finally make our way to the wolf form. So if your damage is lacking, if you have too many green items, for example, or the enemies just have a lot of resistances, then later on into the match, it might actually be harder to enter the werewolf form than it is in the middle or at the beginning of the match. Anyways, now that we've gotten the big stance switching mechanic out of the way, let's talk about her abilities. So each of her abilities here has the normal human variant and then the werewolf variant, and they are all entirely different abilities, but as you allocate ability points into each of these abilities, it will upgrade both versions of the abilities. So if I allocate 1 point into Slamfire, for example, that will also upgrade Go for the Throat, which is the associated Werewolf upgrade. So pretty straightforward how this system works. So let's talk about her human abilities first. The first ability here is Slamfire, which instantly reloads your gun. Very helpful considering it takes a while to do that normally. You gain bonus fire rate and deal bonus weapon damage based on the target's health for a limited number of shots, but you suffer from reduced accuracy, so this is a very close-ranged ability, and it allows you to fire 3 shots back to back, and each of those shots will deal 4% of their current health as damage, making this great for tank busting. So if I pop this on Infernus here, pow, pow, pow! We fire out those 3 shots and they do additional damage, so it's a very bursty ability. It only has a 20-second cooldown, and the duration is 5 seconds, so you can time your shots and wait just a little bit before firing them into the target. But the accuracy, like I said, is worse. Let me turn off cooldowns. This is the normal accuracy, and now if I activate this ability, you see my shots are a little bit more spread, and so you will definitely want to be close when you use this ability. This ability also has no spirit scaling component. This character doesn't really like spirit power that much from what I've noticed. Most of her abilities either don't have a spirit scaling mechanic, or the spirit scaling just isn't very strong, and so it's not exactly worth it. Anyways, let's talk about the upgrades now. So the tier 1 gives you 4 seconds off the cooldown. Very nice. Only a 16-second cooldown on this. The tier 2 makes each of your 3 shots have 30% more weapon damage. And then the final upgrade makes it so that if you hit all shots, you will deal 10% current health as damage, making this very bursty, especially against tankier targets. And so you'll really want to use this ability versus characters like Mo and Krill because they have a lot of health. And so now if I pop this into Infernus, pow! I hit all 3 of those shots and I get bonus damage. Of course, this is a level 0 Infernus, so it didn't really do much damage. But if I use this against a tankier target, well, all of a sudden, I'm doing 788 damage there, and I have no items and no level scaling at all, so it can get pretty intense. Next, let's talk about her second ability, the Boot Kick. This has a similarly low cooldown of 21 seconds, and it is a movement ability where you dash forward and kick the first enemy hit, dealing melee damage while pushing yourself off and marking them. If you shoot the marked target, it will deal spirit damage and then remove the mark. And this is kind of a weird ability, if I'm being totally honest. First of all, it does not do heavy melee damage. If I go ahead and buy melee charge here, and activate it on this unsuspecting enemy, yeah, it doesn't activate melee charge. So unfortunately, this will have the extended cooldown for melee lifesteal, life strike, spirit strike, and spirit snatch. And as you can see, if I activate it on the enemy, it knocks them back and pushes me back, and then if I shoot them, I deal a bonus burst of spirit damage, and it does 25 damage by default. Because I'm max leveled, I have a bunch of spirit power, and so it goes all the way up to 64 bonus damage. It's really not a lot, and there's no way to increase this with the upgrades either, because as you can see for the upgrades, well, it's minus 6 seconds of cooldown. That's very nice. On hero hit, restore 2 stamina, very good. And then tier 3 does actually seem to be quite good for defense because it reduces enemy damage by 25% for 5 seconds. So all of that's well and good, but I'm really confused as to what the mark is even for. Like, what is the point of this? It does a tiny bit of bonus damage, and the mark doesn't seem to do anything else. Like, it doesn't reveal them through walls, there's no crowd control component. It's very strange. Now, you can actually use this boot kick to go up, but it's a little finicky. You can't go straight up, so it will still send you forward even if you're looking all the way up. And if you use it on the ground like this, it doesn't send you up at all, so you do have to jump before you use it to travel upwards, just like in the case of Calico and Shiv's dashes. And if you do try to use it to fly an extended distance, sometimes the kick just won't register on the enemies because it'll end and you'll still have some momentum, but you won't actually kick them, like what just happened there with the Infernus there. And so I just find it to be honestly a little bit of a strange movement ability overall, a little bit clunky. Sometimes you fall short from the enemies. It's alright for damage. If I reset my hero, though, the stats get a lot worse. This is only doing about 65 damage, and it puts her in a kind of vulnerable position with the enemies. So, I don't know, maybe I'm being too hard on the character, but, yeah, it's just, I don't know, not really my favorite ability. Silver's third ability is another bola? Oh my goodness, she and Viper can be best friends. This, however, is not an ultimate ability, it's just a regular plain old bola. So it has a 20-second cooldown, and it does also a very small amount of spirit damage, 40 damage, and both of these abilities, the boot kick and the entangling bola, by the way, have 1 spirit scaling. So it's another clue, I guess, that this character isn't as finished as some of the other heroes that we've gotten, because first, she has placeholder animations, and then second of all, just 1 spirit scaling? Like, not more, not less? It doesn't feel very refined. But anyways, it does 40 damage, and on hit, it will slow the enemies by 20% for 1.5 seconds, and this slow will also prevent them from using movement abilities, stamina, or even jumping. You can't jump just regularly with this bola on you, so kinda trips you up. And the upgrades give you, well, first and foremost, 25% extra movement speed slow, making the slow actually impactful on top of the crippling effects. The Tier 2 upgrade is quite powerful indeed because it increases the debuff duration by 0.75 seconds. Finally, you are able to ricochet the bola to 2 additional targets, and it's not really clear what the range is on that, but yeah, you can just kind of bounce it between enemies like that. And it is a very slow projectile. If I stand back at a distance, you see that it has quite a long travel time, and so hitting it on the enemies from a long distance away can be very difficult, but very rewarding if you do hit it as a pretty decent crowd control tool. That means that this character has an ability that naturally counters Mina. Yay! That's always welcome. So as the human version of Silver, you can throw a bola to ensnare someone, jump to them, and then unload your mag into them with the slam fire, and theoretically, that's enough damage to put you into the Lykan curse. It is a little difficult to pull off, though. There's the skill shot with the bola. Her weapon is a little difficult to use. It's got that slow fire rate, of course, and you are putting yourself in danger by getting up close and personal with the target. So she is by no means an easy character to play, at least for the human version. Now, to demonstrate the werewolf's abilities, I am going to be buying superior duration, just so I can actually stay in the curse for as long as possible. So, as a werewolf, as I already mentioned, you have this sort of pseudo-melee attack. The werewolf is a little bit more brain dead than the regular Silver, but, well, I mean, you've earned it, because you did the hard work by transforming into a werewolf in the first place, and so I think that's very fair enough. And the werewolf is also seemingly more powerful than the human variation when it comes to the damage output, and that is evidenced by the werewolf's abilities. So the first one here is Go for the Throat, where you deal melee damage to all enemies in front of you, just like this, and it is a very short-ranged ability, but it has some very powerful stats. So, it does 75 melee damage by default, and it of course scales up with boons as you progress throughout the match, and it also deals 8% of the enemy's missing health as damage. And this kind of has a synergy with Slam Fire, because if you Slam Fire a target before you transform into the werewolf, then the werewolf can finish them off by dealing more damage the lower the enemies are. And you will also get 40% lifesteal on this melee damage, making it a pretty nice sustainability during the werewolf transformation. So let's take a look at the upgrades. The first upgrade adds 30 damage, pretty straightforward. And the second one gives you 25% lifesteal. Huzzah! The third ability is definitely the most powerful damage upgrade because it gives you 5% missing health as damage, bringing the total up to 13%. And so this is useful for 2 things. First of all, it's useful for healing if you're in the thick of it as the werewolf, and it's also useful for executing targets that are low HP. So, yeah, overall a pretty good ability, and it has an extremely low cooldown as well, of just 5 seconds? Are you kidding me? That's so low. So you can spam this a lot during the werewolf form. The second ability here is the Mauling Leap. It is also a movement ability, just like the second ability in the human form. And, well, it's also, in my opinion, a little clunky. It's got a wind-up delay before you actually use it, and while you can jump up into the sky with it, it's, I don't know, it doesn't go all the way up. I kind of expect it to work as fluidly as Majestic Leap does, but it doesn't. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just skill issue on my part, but I just figured I'd point it out. But let's talk about the actual stats of it now. So, it does do pretty good damage. 1.9 melee scaling, and it does 114 damage here by default. And when you hit the enemies, it applies a spirit damage over time debuff. 18 damage per second, or I guess 15 damage per second before we get spirit power online. And it also shreds their bullet resist by 8%. This debuff also lasts for 6 seconds, which is plenty of time to maul the enemies to death and take advantage of the lower bullet resist. So let's take a look at the upgrades. First of all, we get plus 10 damage per second. Alright, pretty nice. The second upgrade shaves 9 seconds off the cooldown, bringing the cooldown from 16 seconds to a staggering 7 seconds. That's really nice. And then finally, the biggest upgrade of all, you get to shred their bullet resist by an additional 12%, more than doubling the debuff. So this ability in particular has some very good upgrades that you'll want to pick up for use during the werewolf form. Finally, we have the tail whack. Wow, look at that. It's so fluffy and also deadly. So this is a crowd control ability similar to the bola. You smash enemies around you, dealing spirit damage, and then disarming and slowing the enemies. And so it does 45 damage by default here. And again, it has 1x spirit scaling. Okay, Valve. And it also will disarm them for 2.5 seconds and apply a movement slow, 30% for just 1.5 seconds. So, honestly, I don't know why the slow doesn't last for the same amount of duration as the disarm. That seems a little weird to me, but regardless, it is very helpful to combo in for some extra damage and also stop the gun builds from shredding you. Let's take a look at the upgrades now. First of all, we get plus 25 damage. Alright, pretty nice. Second upgrade drastically improves the slow, from 30% up to 70%. Wow, look at that. And the third upgrade disarms the enemies for 1 additional second, bringing the total up to 3.5 seconds. And again, I don't know why the slow doesn't last for the same amount of time. I feel like that's unnecessarily weak. But it is definitely a good tool for keeping the enemies in engagement range as you maul them to death, and then eventually finish them off with a bite, just like that. So, yeah, it's a pretty straightforward gameplay loop for the werewolf, and definitely much easier to pull off. So let's talk about some general strategy and upgrades for the character now. Now, I will admit, this is the first new character that's got me scratching my head a little bit. She definitely benefits from green items and gun items, and less so spirit scaling, because all of her abilities that do spirit damage do very low spirit damage, and also don't really have any crazy spirit scaling. And the first ability, and the fourth ability, don't have any spirit scaling at all, apart from the fire rate bonus that you get from Lykan Curse, but the fire rate is already really good to begin with, and I think it's still just better to scale more gun items to synergize with that. This is what I've got for my build right now, and it's not published because, frankly, I'm not done testing it, but there are some very obvious synergies for this character. First of all, Kinetic Dash. This is in the default build. Even Valve knows this item is good, and that's because it doubles your ammo pool from 5 up to 11, so more than double actually, and it gives you a slightly more bearable fire rate. This fire rate, by the way, is actually so bad that she can't even secure her own minions' souls consistently. I've had cases where an enemy Graves was just denying on me constantly, not because I was missing, but because straight up the next shot would not come out in time. So on lane, you definitely want to try and punch minions where you can, and maybe even play a little bit more passively to bring the wave to your tower, where you can more safely dispose of them with a punch and a kick. Otherwise, though, she also definitely benefits from close-ranged items, because she, of course, has a shotgun, so she's going to naturally want to engage up close. So point blank, and Hunter's Aura, the werewolf item, is great on the werewolf character. Oh my gosh, that's just crazy. Who would have thunk it? Especially because both these items also give you bonus health, which is very nice indeed. And so that will make your shotgun stronger and help you to build into your Lykan form easier. And the Lykan is just pure close quarters gaming, so both of these items are fantastic. As far as green items are concerned, I've been testing a couple. First of all, Enduring Speed. pretty nice, adds even more speed in your Lykan form, and reduces the effect of movement slow, which is always good when you're playing such a close quarters character. And Life Strike actually does a lot of heavy lifting on this character because she has so many different melee attacks. The boot kick is a melee attack, mauling leap is a melee attack, go for the throat is a melee attack, and they all do a pretty good amount of damage, so yeah, you actually end up getting a ton of healing from this. I tested it compared to Bullet Lifesteal, and it actually seemed to be outpacing Bullet Lifesteal in some situations, so pretty good item on her. And adding even more mobility with a Warp Stone is also pretty good, because sometimes chasing people in the Lykan Curse is difficult, especially if they successfully manage to evade you after your leap is down. Another thing I really noticed in my first couple of Silver games, though, was that it was sometimes insanely difficult to get into the Lykan Curse, especially if you miss even just 1 or 2 shots, which is not unreasonable. That happens a lot. And so for the spirit scaling, I decided to go for Cold Front and Torment Pulse as the items that I'm currently testing. Even though she doesn't benefit from spirit that much, I still want to get up to that spike just because it's still reasonably helpful at the end of the day. And both of these items benefit her for getting her Lykan Curse up more consistently. Both of these do area of effect damage. Cold Front hits everybody around you, and Torment Pulse just passively ticks away at 2 people near you. And so this can be very helpful for consistently getting this up, even if you miss a couple of shots. You just have to get in close quarters for it, which is what the boot kick is for. Later on down the line, we can get Spirit Snatch. I'm still on the fence about whether this is actually a good item to pick up, because again, like, how much spirit power do you really need? And also, she already has crazy resistances during the Lykan Curse anyways, so how much is the Spirit Resist Steal helping you? I don't know. But it does do extra damage, and it can help you build into your werewolf form by doing extra damage on the boot kick, so maybe it is still worth it. Express Shot, the item that I don't particularly care for, is actually pretty solid on her for doing some burst damage. And again, it helps you get into your Lykan Curse easier because, well, she does high damage per shot and has an extremely low fire rate. And so, yeah, you can just burst like that. And it's pretty solid. And it does a big chunk of that bloodlust there that you need to transform into a werewolf. And the last thing I want to discuss is Toxic Bullets, and by extension, any other item that has a build-up component like Slowing Bullets and Inhibitor. So she is really good at applying these items. Valve has taken into consideration that she has a very slow firing weapon, and so she gets 65% buildup per shot on Inhibitor, and for Toxic Bullets she gets 43% buildup per shot, so she is getting that in 2 shots for Inhibitor and 3 shots for Toxic Bullets. And with Express Shot, it is even easier to actually build that up on somebody. And that same buildup applies in werewolf form, which has a considerably faster fire rate, and so it is basically instant as a werewolf to build these up. And Inhibitor is especially interesting. Toxic Bullets is obviously great. I think a lot of people are going to buy that. But Inhibitor, to me, is particularly interesting because it adds even more healing reduction, and also it reduces the enemy's damage by 35%, and it is a completely different stat from the damage reduction that you get during Lykan Curse, so it acts as an extra layer of defense that doesn't incur diminishing returns, because, as I'm sure you know, if you stack multiple sources of damage reduction, they will become less and less effective with each source you add on. So yeah, I don't know if it's actually like a crazy good item on this character or what. Chances are it probably isn't. Most characters don't buy Inhibitor, but I just thought it was interesting that you can build this up in 2 shots. As far as your engagements go, you have to be very careful with using the boot kick, because this can put you in a really bad position if you are just playing too aggressively and going in too deeply. But it can be useful for going in and making it easier to land the shots of Slam Fire. And so what you can do is bola somebody, then pounce on them, hit them with those shots, and that does a tremendous amount of damage with the right items, assuming you're able to actually hit all of your shots. And of course, it will also build up your ultimate pretty quickly. And then during the ultimate, you can just go slashing, and then as soon as someone escapes you, you can jump on them, use the bite, use the tail whack to keep them in range, and if you get kills, then you chain it and you just combo it together. And finally, of course, you can also use the Warp Stone as an extra little benefit to reposition around the battlefield and keep up the chase. Did I just say battlefield? Why can't I speak? So that is how Silver, the newest hero in Deadlock, works. Let me know what you think about Silver in the comments section down below. She is the first stand-switching hero in Deadlock, and, do you think she shouldn't be the last? Or is this enough stand-switching for one game? Do you think she's strong? Do you think she's weak? What are some strategies that you've developed for Silver? I want to hear about all of it in the comments section down below. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more epic coverage of the new updates that Deadlock has been pumping out like clockwork recently. I've been having a blast covering it, and I hope you guys are enjoying it too. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.